The judge said he didn't really care because of the fact.
The way she presented it, the judge said he didn't really care. Like, she really went from like building it up and then really slowly and then just quickly revealing like, yeah, so what he said was that he didn't give a That's comedic. Yo, I have a plushie available for purchase right now. If you guys want to grab one, they're only here for a limited time. So make sure to check the first link in the description. We're about to watch a video about a son that murdered his mom's killer 22 years later. Listen, you killed his mom, he killed you. I mean, hey, tit for tat. I don't really feel that bad for the killer. Also, I don't think the son should kill somebody either, because I feel like if you kill somebody that killed your mom, like, I don't know if that would heal the grief. I'm not a big fan of tit for tat in every situation, to be honest with you, because I feel like that just perpetuates a cycle of harm in a lot of circumstances. Now, if you kill someone, it's indefinite, so like there's not really going to be much of a cycle. In other areas, like, you know, social issues or whatever, I feel like every time we go tit for tat or we go bigotry for bigotry, it just creates a cycle where it never ends. So I'm not normally a fan of that. However, in this case, it's a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? It's not even a cycle. It's like ping pong. It just went ping and pong, and then after the pong, it was dead. You know? Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I was talking about a whole living person. My fault.
Chinese New Year is crazy. It's a day for families to be reunited, for people to be like thankful for what they have and pray for the next year's blessings. It's a serious holiday.
So guys, and Lunar New Year, don't cancel me. By the way, my fault, gang. Listen, I didn't say she did. I'm just watching the video, okay? I'm not trying to get, you know, canceled on Twitter like some of my friends have. Okay, listen. And Lunar New Year, I got you. I'm inclusive. We inclusive here. We inclusive here out at the Quinn Benet channel.
I believe everything shuts down in China for like an entire week during Chinese New Year.
Yeah, sometimes it's like it's a month of celebration.
It's insane. If you've ever done business with anyone in China, for like a week and a half, radio silence. They will not respond to an email. They will not text you back.
Damn.
They will not WhatsApp you. It is a very serious holiday. And just like Christmas, people are typically in good spirits. They're all gonna go home, visit their parents.
Yo, when I did, I really like the Lunar New Year. I remember I was in my old job, like everyone would do the red envelope thing. I think that was kind of cute. Also, I liked I tried one of the cookies. I think one of the wait, oh my God, I almost said it. I didn't say it though. One of the colleagues of mine that was part of the Chinese portion of our company gave me a mooncake in Japan. And that's how I found out I was popular on Bilibili. They literally told me, yeah, your face is everywhere. I was like, well, what? They're like, no, like your real face. And I was like, what do you mean my real face? They're like, no, like I don't even know like what VTuber you are. I just know like you, the face, like everywhere. And I was like, and then my doll little sister was like, yeah, it's true, like you. And I was like, what? So, anyways.
Eat their favorite little dishes. But Zhang KouKou, we're going to call him KouKou.
Zhang KouKou.
He had other plans. Chinese New Year, he went home to spend time with his family. He watched all the little neighborhood kids set off their little fireworks, and he walked around his hometown taking in the views, the memories of like what he grew up with and all the things he used to see as a teenager. And then he packed his knife and murdered 3 people.
3? Okay, 3 is crazy. Nah, listen, I was on Team Sun, you know, but you killed 3 people. Like, these 3 people all better have killed your mom too, because what?
And do it quickly. It was painful, brutal. He admitted to every single part of it. And yet, in court, he stood in front of the judge and he basically said, I don't regret a single thing I did. He admitted to killing all 3 people. And the entire nation supported him. They were rooting for him. They protested the government for even arresting him.
They protested for arresting his ass? Oh, that's crazy. That's insane.
Set at the fact that this killer, this admitted killer, was being arrested. Literally, why? Like, how? Have we all just like collectively lost our minds on this one? It's because I think there's one thing.
I think family is really big in Eastern cultures, and so that's probably why.
To gravitate towards revenge. And I'm not talking some unhinged man that gets rejected so he takes revenge by killing a woman. The type of revenge people can get behind. It's like those eye for an eye cases. 22 years ago, KouKou was a 13-year-old little boy. He witnessed his mom get beaten to death by a group of men.
He witnessed it too? Oh, honestly? No. Honestly, Team KouKou, okay? No. And a group of men, so it was all 3 of them? Yo, those guys. No. you had to watch that too. Not only did you hear about it, but you saw it. I'd be mad too, especially when you're 13. That's like some formative years.
22 years, that was all he thought about. He watched the killers move on with their lives. Some of the killers became figures in local governments, successful business owners. They started
Figures and successful business owners. I'd be so mad. Like, I already get mad when people that are like shady in the streaming industry are successful, but like, imagine like someone that killed your mom. Like, that's like a next level of like doing some crazy stuff. Because like there are people like in entertainment that have done really messed up stuff that like I can't really say anything about, or like I'm gonna get more hate than, you know, the person who did the bad deed. But like this is like next level. Like, you know, it's like that's your family and you had to witness it.
their own families. KouKou waited until 2018, Chinese New Year's Eve, where everyone comes home to their families, to their hometowns, to celebrate, to feel unity and peace. KouKou came back to kill 3 people. And he smiled in court and said, "I don't regret what I did. I wanted revenge."
That's kind of now, yo, listen. That's cold in like a badass way, but that's also cold in like a heartless way. You know what I'm saying? You cold in 2 ways, bro. But like, yo, I mean, this is one of those things where I can't really say what's right or wrong. I just like, I understand, you know? And like, if I knew the dude, I wouldn't consider him a bad guy for doing this, but it is like, it's questionable. You know what I'm saying? It's questionable. Okay, I'm gonna grab my food. 1 sec.
Available at rottenmangopodcast.com. And with that being said, let's talk about Zhang KouKou. This is a case that fascinated Tiffany. That's his little sister. Okay, first of all, that makes it sound like Tiffany is plotting some sort of intricate revenge. She's not, but she was really emotionally moved by this case. And I think my family sat there and debated this case for like 4 hours during dinner one night. So I would love to know your thoughts on just how far you would go for revenge, or maybe not even just you, but like how far do you think it's acceptable for anyone to go for revenge? Like if you saw this play out in court in real time, how would you feel? What would you be rooting for?
What's his name? KouKou. That's what I'd be saying. I mean, to be honest, like, listen, we're gonna enforce the rules fairly. Like, technically, he should go to jail, okay? But also, the men that murked his mom should be in jail too, and they're not in jail. So guess what? The court already ain't playing by fair rules. So why should KouKou have to play by fair rules? Think about that, huh? Ever think about that? Because he knew who the people were, apparently. So I feel like if a 13-year-old can figure it out, the government definitely can.
And like, do you think if the law doesn't get justice, that humans should be able to get justice in their own ways? KouKou says that he has 3 core memories. Like, you know those moments that change your brain chemistry, like those types of memories? These are his 3. I mean, sure, maybe there's like a couple other moments in his life that seem memorable, but he says his entire life, 30-something years of living, can be summed up by 3 events. 1, watching his mom get beaten to death in front of him when he's 13.
That
2,
would be a core memory.
holding his dead mom in his arms while he cried. And 3, he remembered watching his mom, her body get autopsied in front of the whole hometown. The medical examiner didn't take her to a hospital or a morgue or anywhere to do this.
What?
He cracked her skull open in front of 13-year-old.
So not me eating while they're she's talking about people. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was going to get nitty gritty right now.
KouKou
This is how y'all feel watching my
in front of the
streams?
entire town and performed an autopsy right then and there. He was 13 when all 3 events took place. He was literally a kid, just a kid living in a village. So the killer of KouKou's mom are actually his neighbors. I have to break down this neighborhood and its dynamic for you real quick, and we're going to take it really all the way back before his mom was murdered. The story takes place in Wangping village in China, and KouKou's family, they're the Zhang family. It's KouKou Zhang. And it consisted of mom and dad, KouKou's older sister, and KouKou, the youngest. Their next door neighbors were the Wang family, which consisted of Mr. and Mrs. Wang, and they had 3 sons. So the 2 families initially, they actually got along really well. Okay, they were like really good neighbors. They were tight. Both families relied on farming and crops. So these are really intensive, labor-intensive jobs. And for them, at least, it was unstable. Like 1 year they're doing okay. They can put food on the table. The next year they have no crops. They're barely getting by. So on seasons when one family wasn't harvesting as much, the other family would step in, share some grains with them. Or maybe during a season when one family was so swamped or somebody got injured, the other family would come in and they would help. So it seems like a pretty wholesome relationship. So for years, this is how they
Yeah, where the hell did it go wrong?
The
What
Zhang
the-
family,
what
the Wang family, they're on good terms.
Uh-huh.
And then a huge government project comes into town. So back in the 90s, this is still a thing that happens, but in the US as well. The government were rolling out these grain contracts. So they're like, we're going to come into these little towns, these little villages. We're going to partner with local farmers and produce a ton of grain and a ton of this and that. And we're going to not only guarantee that local farmer work, but typically the government contracts would give you a lot more money than what these farmers would normally get during harvest
that's good
season.
then.
It's very lucrative. It's an amazing opportunity. And there's tough competition to get these contracts. It's not like every single farmer in the area, like you get a contract, you get a contract. People have to really fight for it. So the Zhang family and the Wang family, they're both eyeing these contracts. And like a lot of stories where there's competition and money on the line, the neighbors just become not so friendly anymore. They start getting into these heated public arguments. Okay, so at first it starts with bickering. Like, you don't really need the contract. Like, we need the contract. Then it slowly escalates into full-blown arguments of like, well, we helped you that last season, so you need to give up this contract bid so that we can win. And their relationship as neighbors was just completely ruined. The Zhangs, the Wangs, they hate each other now over this fight for these government deals. The Zhang family they were so upset. But I think they're the type to go home and kind of feel bad. They're heated. I'm not going to act like they're angels and they didn't share a couple bad words and say a bunch of things, but they go home and they're like, maybe I took it too far.
Okay, but regardless of if you got heated or whatever, like, bro, that does not warrant like killing somebody. Like, that's a different level of like, what the fuck are we doing here? You killing somebody over some beans. Like
maybe that was too much. I mean, we have been neighbors for years now. So their thinking is, okay, there's got to be a way that we can all win. It's got to be a win-win situation. Maybe they need it more. Maybe the Wangs, because they have 3 sons, we only have 2. Maybe they need more money for that extra mouth. Okay, what about this? So the Zhang family comes up with this proposal. They're like, listen, Wangs, this is going to be a win-win situation. Why don't we do this? You guys sign a 2-year government contract deal. We will give up our bid for it. And the minute your 2-year contract ends, you let us take over the next 2 years. We go back and forth, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, until basically the government is like, sorry, we're done with these contracts.
Wait, that's kind of fair though. But the thing is with stuff like that is like, how do you know the other person's actually going to give it up? It's like those split or steal things. Like, you can say you're going to do one thing, but that doesn't mean you're going to do it.
So at this point, both families need these contracts. They're in dire financial situations. The Wang family agreed, and they shook on the situation. Things never really went back to normal, but at least they're like cordial again. So for 2 years,
I would have sign a contract between the two parties. But I don't know how enforceable that is in somewhere like China, to be honest.
Wangs are working hard, making their money, making a lot of money. And they're like, it's been 2 years, but I like it.
Yep.
It's hard for them to think about even going back to the times where they didn't have this guaranteed money or this influx of cash. They just couldn't bear the idea of that. So behind the Zhang family back, they renew their government contract for another 2 years. They're basically screwing the Zhangs over.
I knew it.
This meant the Zhang family would not be getting their turn. And the Zhangs, when they find out, they're
rightfully
pissed. To make matters worse, instead of having some shame, instead of tucking their tail between their legs and hanging their head and saying, you know what? I just really need the money. Coming up with some lame excuse. The Wangs are like, yeah, so what are you going to do about it? Yeah, we re-signed. What are you going to do about it? We never said we would give you the contract. Do you have it in writing? Do you have it proof?
That's what I said. You need it in writing. Yo, never take someone's word, bro. If it's something like this, always have it written.
So, and this is the village in China. So a lot of people just run off their word. This is not like New York City where everyone's like, oh, put it in writing, sign this NDA. You know what I mean? The Zhangs are furious, but Mrs. Zhang has always been kind of the more outspoken one. She's the matriarch of the family. She also has a really strong moral compass. So this is going against everything that she was taught as a kid. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. What's wrong with the Wangs? So she would storm over to the Wang family house and she would scream at them, how dare you do this? How could you do this? We had an agreement. How could you do this to our family? Mr. Zhang would run after his wife. He would hear her literally screaming because they're neighbors, and it would just echo through the entire neighborhood. He would try to calm his wife down. Come on, babe, let's just go home. They're not even worth it. But the Wangs were not helping. Every time she would go into their house or go to their front door in a fit of anger, they would just egg her on. They would scream out the window, what are you barking about? We haven't even made money yet. We'll pass it on when we make enough money. Mrs. Zhang would lose her mind. She would scream back at them like, what the hell did you just say? Villagers would start gathering around to see what the commotion was. And, most of the time, Mr. Zhang was successful at convincing his wife to come back home. Mr. Zhang felt like, there's got to be a better way to handle this. We can't just go and scream through people's windows anymore. We're embarrassing our family. So he goes to the village committee in hopes of having his deal honored. He basically goes to the mayor and like the officials of the village. And he's like, come on. This was the deal I made with the Wangs. Can you force them to honor this deal? And the committee listens. He's emotional about how his family really needs this. They don't have food. They don't have money. They're barely scraping by. And they listen to him and they say, we think you should drop it, honestly.
Low-key, I was about to theory craft. If they got it, I was going to be like, oh, they killed them because they're mad that they stole the 2-year contract by going to the village. But the village isn't even going to give it to them?
I think you shouldn't push this issue any further. Just move on with your life. This has never happened before. Okay, it sounds like it might happen in like a big mayor's office, a big city. This is a village. Everybody knows each other. The village committee is known for resolving these types of disputes. Turns out the reason why the Wang family was so confident and cocky that
Were they
could
paying
get
off
away
the
with
village?
going back on their word was their eldest son had become the president of the government management office. Basically, he had a lot of sway with the village committee. And with that, he forced them to ignore the Zhangs, and that's what they did. So the Zhang family, they hate the Wangs even more now. Not only are they disgusting for going back on their deal, but they're greedy, manipulative liars. And on top of that, they're corrupt and using their power to get rich and screwing people over. KouKou's mom went around yelling about how the Wangs were evil. Like literally every neighborhood stop, she's going yelling about how they're evil. So fast forward to August 27th of 1996. KouKou's mom took her 2 kids down to the river to wash their clothes. On their way back, they have to pass the Wang family house. And KouKou's mom I don't think she necessarily had the intention of starting a fight. And this is just one version of the story. We're going to get into another version
Why would you do this with your kids, though?
The second son of the Wangs happened to be squatting by the Wang family front door. He was maybe around 20 years old at the time. Keep in mind, KouKou's like 13. So KouKou's mom is walking past the Wang family house. And she's like, you know what? Why the hell not? So she spits at the second son. She doesn't really spit on him, just at him. The spit lands in front of him on the ground. And he gets up and he screams at her, what a fucking crazy lady. At this point, KouKou's mom had already walked past the Wang house. But when he's screaming at her, what a crazy freaking lady, she stops in her tracks, makes a U-turn, and it's like, what did you just say? She starts marching towards his face, and she gets...
Bro, why you started the fight, though? Why would you start it?
in his face, and she spits on him. This time it lands on his jacket.
See, this is you can't get this aggressive with people because they're going to get aggressive back.
20-year-old responds by slapping her across the face. So KouKou's mom, she freaks out and a full-blown fight ensues. KouKou's mom and the 20-year-old are in a physical altercation at this point. KouKou's older sister runs home to grab their dad, Mr. Zhang, and the Wang family, they hear what's going on. It's right at their front doorstep. They rush out of the house. Now, Mr. Zhang and the whole Wang family members are trying to break up this fight. Or at least that's what they're trying to do initially. Because as they're trying to pull KouKou's mom away and as they're trying to pull the 20-year-old away, they start having words with each other. They're like, well, if your wife didn't do this, or like, well, if you didn't do this. And instead of breaking up the fight, we get all these mini fights breaking out. Mm-hmm. It's just pure chaos. It's like a full-blown brawl between the two families now.
See, why couldn't you just, pride is a crazy thing. I'm not gonna lie. If they really wanted to just resolve it, they both would have shut the fuck up. Or if one party was being unreasonable, the other one would shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? But they're both kind of going crazy.
KouKou's mom was getting the biggest of the beatings though, because compared to the 20-year-old that she's, quote, fighting, she doesn't stand a chance. So when she sees the youngest Wang son coming straight at her, she's like, I'm about to get jumped by these two kids in their physical prime. So in the heat of the moment, she's probably scared. She grabs the iron bar that her husband had brought and she starts waving it. She's like, stand back, stand back. And she's frantically waving it and it hits the youngest Wang son twice on the head. KouKou remembers Mr. Wang screaming at KouKou's mom, kill her, kill her. And in the chaos.
I'm not gonna lie, I've never been in any situation like this where families are beefing this hard. You know what I'm saying? Normally I feel like it's just petty. But this is exceeded petty.
It's not really clear. It's going to be debated later. But one of the Wang family members pulled out a wooden bat, starts waving it around, and you just hear these crack noises. KouKou's mom was hit on the head with the bat. She fell over to the ground, and she had blood streaming down her nose and her mouth. She was motionless. It was just all of a sudden chaos, 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 and then silence. The Zhang family immediately tried to help her back up, but she's not responsive. The Wang family, I guess they sense that something is very, very wrong because they just stood there frozen and silent. They don't even try to help. Now, a little bit of context for what's about to happen.
So you're down to fight, but once it gets too far, you're like, you want to pull out, Wang family? Like, come on, bro.
They live in a village. They don't have cars. They can't really call an ambulance because that would cost a lot of money. Like, imagine how much it costs here. It's going to be a million times worse. The closest hospital is like a few towns over, and it's not even a big hospital. The Zhangs are yelling at the Wang family to call a car for them to take her to the hospital. The Wang family, they're standing there, they're like, no, that's not our responsibility. So Mr. Zhang ends up leaving his wife and kids laying there in the Wang driveway, and he starts running towards the head of the village. So kind of like a mayor. And he can't even catch his breath. He's explaining the situation like, we were over there and they're fighting us, and then they hit my wife on the head, and now she's down and we need to go to the hospital. And the head of the village is like, hold on, what? Okay, let me go over and see what I can do. He goes over, and the Wang...
Okay, first of all, why the hell he leave his kids behind? That's crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Listen, I'd be like, get in the house or something first, okay? You know what I'm saying? And second of all, the Wangs are evil, bro. You're making more money because you stole a contract out of them, and now one of your own beats the wife, takes it too far, and you won't call the ambulance.
Family are like, why? Why do we need to call her a car? Our son was hurt too. So technically, if you want to do that, the Zhang family needs to call us a car to take our son to the hospital. Is that what they want to do? But the mayor is like, yeah, well, the key difference is that your son is standing and coherent. KouKou's mom is bleeding from her mouth and nose and is laying motionless on the ground. So with the urging of the village head, the Wang family, they begrudgingly, did not want to do this.
Everywhere I go, the more I talk that word, the more I hear it. I hate the word begrudgingly, okay? Just say reluctantly. Come on, man.
Called for a car for them and sent her to the hospital. She was pronounced dead at 10 p.m. that night. The hospital that they went to is a couple towns over, but it's just another small village. It's not a city, so it's this tiny little hospital. And once they pronounced her dead, they didn't even have space to keep her body. So they released the body to the Zhang family that night. It's not really standard for them to do autopsy, even when someone's death was clearly a beating. So they release her body, and the Zhangs are broken. They don't really know what to do. Mrs. Zhang was kind of the matriarch of the family. She was the glue that kept everyone together, and now she's gone. So under all of...
I would be so paranoid now thinking about it to live in like a farm area. No, because what do you do? What do you do if you get seriously hurt? You're kind of just...
all of this emotional distress and grief, they bring Mrs. Zhang's body to the front of the Wang family house, and they demand justice. So imagine KouKou and his whole family. KouKou's sitting there in front of the Wang driveway, holding his mom's dead body, while his dad is crying and screaming, do something. Villagers were gathering around. The Zhang family reported the case to the police. And because of this, and this part is so wild, but the police hired a forensic expert to go to the Wang house to check up on Mrs. Zhang's corpse. And because they're in the village, they can't transport her body back to the hospital. The village committee can't afford it. The Zhang family can't afford it. It's impossible. The forensic expert just performs an autopsy right then and there. They don't even force the other villagers to leave. So the whole village is just watching an autopsy in real time. I don't know why they did that.
Yo, IMO, the government, this is what the government for, bro. You should pay. What are you talking about? Why is the victim's family have to pay for the police and the autopsy to do their job properly?
KouKou is just there watching. The forensic shaved off all Mrs. Zhang's hair, used a towel and hot water to clean her scalp, cut open her scalp, and looked inside. Nobody tried to give this woman any privacy. Not a single person was like, everybody leave. Nobody, not even the kids, were told to go to another room. 13-year-old KouKou literally watched his mom get autopsied.
That's on his dad. His dad should have been like, you should leave, to be honest. But his dad's probably in shock too. That's rough, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Yo, I hope the whole Wang family watched that thing too. I don't think they deserve to see it, but I do think they deserve to see it. So you know what you actually did, bro. I hope their whole family watched that. Because they have any shred of a heart, they would feel guilty to the end of time.
They just proceeded to saw her skull right open and close it back up after. During all of this, the villagers were crowding around, and the forensic experts stated publicly the results confirmed that Mrs. Zhang's death was caused by blunt force trauma to the head, most likely from a wooden bat. So that night, 3 members of the Wang family were promptly arrested.
Oh, let's go. Oh, wait, I didn't even think they got arrested. Wait, how the hell did they get released then?
Wang, the father, the second son, and the youngest son were arrested. They were all taken into police custody. But after their interrogations and after the police investigations, the police said that the youngest son was responsible for killing Mrs. Zhang. This is where it gets weird. Okay, so the Zhang family, remember, yes, it was chaotic, but we distinctly remember that it was the second son that was waving the bat around towards our mom. And we remember this. It wasn't.
Oh, so they're trying. No, I know what they're trying to do. Listen, the Wangs, y'all are some slimy, grimy, weaselly little. You want to know why? Because they're trying to have it be the kid. Because I guarantee if it's a kid and they're under the age of 18 or whatever they legally classify as an adult in China at the time, he's going to get a reduced sentence and then they get off with like a slap on the wrist. Instead of it being the older son and them going away for like murder for life.
Wasn't the youngest son. But the police are shutting down the Zhang family. Like, just let it go already. The youngest son already confessed to being the one that hit her on the head. What more do you want? The belief that the Zhang family held was that the second son was the one responsible, but because he was 20, he would be charged as an adult for murder. The youngest son was still a minor. The Wang family made it so that the youngest son would go down for it, and he would still have to go to jail, but the sentencing was so infuriatingly light and lenient. He wasn't even charged with murder because he was a minor. He was charged with intentional violence, basically assault. And the judge said because Mrs. Zhang started the fight by spitting on the family member, the youngest son's actions were not as heinous and premeditated. He was only sentenced to 7 years in prison. The Zhang family immediately tried to appeal the sentence. They demanded a funeral.
Like, I'm gonna be honest, if the youngest son actually did hit the lady over the head and kill her, I would feel a lot less upset with the intent. Because the thing is, if you're really young, they didn't say how old he was, but he was a minor. Let's say he's like 13, okay? If I'm 13 and I see someone trying to, swinging that thing around and trying to hit one of my family members, I might just pick up a bat around and like hit the lady over the head. Not gonna lie, that's like more of like you're trying to hurt my family, so I'm gonna protect them thing. And you're too young to understand the weight of like, I shouldn't hit them too hard, or like, I should be more light, or my older siblings actually have this under control. Like when you're younger, you make more like brash, split-second decisions that are more likely to be incorrect or miscalculated because you haven't had enough life experience to like really think about the weight of your actions in a lot of cases. So if that was actually the case, I could understand the judge's statement of like, well, if they started the fight, the kid was kind of like, not really, was just kind of scared, whatever. But the problem is, if it was actually the older son, then the older son at age 22, that not to hit someone over the head that's like in their 50s really hard, okay? And you can tell when they've already taken enough. And, I'm not saying you should be like a biologist and you should know exactly when not to hit him, but like you knew it was probably fine, okay? And you still took the brash action. If there was a kid that was 13, they wouldn't really know if it was fine or not. They just do the brash action and then kind of have like a epiphany later. But the older son knew, and I really do believe it was the older son. Like, I just think based off the way the family behaved and how corrupt they were with the whole city council, I really believe that they would do something like this. That's why the minor-in-law is stupid. No, I think minors should be charged with less, to be honest. I really do, unless they've done like ridiculous amounts of heinous things back to back and they're like nearing the adult mark like by like 2 years. But like if you're like 13 and you accidentally hit an old lady over the head with a bat a little too hard, and because they're attacking your family, I really see that as like, yeah, that was way more an accident than like intentional to kill. That was more like, I'm just trying to defend my family. So I get that more, but I don't think that's what happened. I really think it was the older son.
Funeral fees, emotional damages, child support, death compensation from the Wangs. All in all, they asked for about $40,000 US, which like isn't the biggest thing in the world. Like, it's not the most money. Someone died. They took the Wang family to court, and the court decided the Wang family should only have to pay merely $1,500 US. That barely covered the funeral. They lost their mother, and all they got was $1,500.
Damn. It really varies from case to case. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't think the minor law like should be a blanket apply all rule, because I think there are like if someone's 17 and they like were to go to a high school and kill a bunch of people, I'm sorry, you should be tried as an adult. You 17, you were competent enough to go to a place with a lot of people and find out how to get a firearm when you can't legally obtain one. So in my opinion, you should be tried as an adult. But if you're like 13 and the circumstances, like you're trying to defend, you know, one of your family members from this old lady that's trying to attack them, I way more understand the light sentencing. But I don't think that's what happened in this case. I really do think the Wangs just lied to get the shorter sentencing so they could get their, you know, the older son could have a clean record. They can get out of it, you know, without any repercussions.
假如说我们张家人把他们打死了，给他们1500块钱，那就没了，做纪念了。他们愿意了。我妈死了22年，我们真的掉了22年的眼泪。
Is this during the? I think like this is during the
我
funeral.
们上学22年，掉了22年的泪。
Yeah, I feel like this is probably during the court case.
从来都没人提那样的事，只要一提，我们一家3口都掉眼泪。心里老是好像觉得好像。 有口气咽不下去，老是觉得好像心里有个疙瘩似的。
But I don't think that they just lost their mom that night. KouKou was 13. He witnessed all of this. Even the messy aftermath and how the justice system wasn't on their side disregarded his mom's death and said, okay, her life was worth $1,500. I mean, he witnessed the autopsy, for God's sake. Like, clearly, this kid's mental health is going to be affected. People said immediately they started seeing the effects. He became really withdrawn, incredibly introverted. He hated the idea of interacting with just anyone. Once he was done with middle school, he drops out and he just tries to find work. His dad wasn't able to support.
I get it though. I get it though, because like, if you're 13 and your initial relationship with this family was positive with your family, and then suddenly it's really negative and you don't know, and like it gets to the point where someone dies, like I would have trust issues too.
The family alone, so he's like, I gotta man up. KouKou's dad was really worried about him. He's like, KouKou, you can't keep doing this. You can't just get these odd jobs here and there. This is no future for you. Please, why don't you enlist in the army? They can teach you skills. People in the army are respected, and then afterwards, maybe it's easier for you to find a job. So KouKou was in the army from 18 to 20 years old, and he was a remarkably great soldier. Like, all of his comrades and his commanders said just really good things about him. He was so good to the point where in the beginning, his commander sat him down and was like, what made you join the army? KouKou was very transparent. He said, sir, I want to train myself so that I can get revenge for my mother.
Whoa.
Oh, he just said that. He just... Nah, him saying that is crazy.
It's like, what? So they sit down and he tells him everything. And his leader was very sympathetic. But he warned KouKou. You know, like, these thoughts of revenge, they never end well. This is so extreme. I know you're young, but I think you should try to change the way you think. So for the next 2 years, the commander kept in close touch with KouKou.
I feel like should you like get kicked out of the military for saying stuff like that? Because in my opinion, I feel like you kind of, I feel like that's kind of crazy. I don't know.
Trying to slowly get him to change his thinking about wanting revenge and maybe even think about his own future and what do you want after you leave the army? And for a moment, KouKou second-guessed his plan. He thought, you know what, maybe my leader is right. Maybe the best revenge is success. He dreams about going back to the village, working. But I also understand the rehabilitation aspect. Build a second story for their old family home. Maybe KouKou could get a job, work his way up. He would be successful. But because he dropped out of school after middle school, nobody wanted to hire him anymore. He was just jumping around taking odd jobs. And as the days went by, KouKou's like, are you kidding? I'm already 30 years old. He's looking around and everyone around him, they're getting married, having children, they have careers. And KouKou has nothing. He tried to find out how the Wang brothers were doing. They had all moved out of the village. They were doing well. The Wang family and themselves were making good money. The parents were retiring, not in luxury, but they had the luxury to retire, which is a lot. The eldest son was a successful government worker. All 3 of the sons moved to the city, bought nice fancy cars, just living the dream. Even the youngest son, after he got out of prison with a criminal record, his older brother helped him get a job. KouKou wasn't even able to get a job. And he just kept asking himself, if my mom were still alive, would my life be different? Would I have dropped out of middle school? Would I spend so much time with all this hate and anger?
Probably not.
Would I have been okay? Would I have found...
Probably not. That's what I'm saying. Like, yo, I think like it's really hard when you're the victim of someone successful for you to just continually watch them be successful. In my opinion, I think that's one of the hardest things ever. And like, if you're like a little victim, like nothing really, like, you know, like you had like a fight one time, or like, you know, y'all had beef when you were like 13 and like nothing really happened, then like let it go. You know, you just bitter. Okay, not gonna lie. But if it's something like this where it's like something really bad happened, or like something really misstepped, or someone like did something really bad in their line of work that should have been grounds for them getting a lot of flack or pushback, and they completely nullified it or avoided it by either lying or like smartly playing some system, and you're the victim on the other end of that, it is one of the most devastating feelings, because you literally played the game correctly, you were nice, and because of that, this person who lied and played very maliciously got so far ahead, and they're not facing any repercussions. Like, that's terrible. Terrible. And there's a lot of circumstances, like, even if you say anything or you were to come out, especially when it comes to like even like celebrities, a lot of the time the person who was the victim of it will like get a lot of flack for just being like, yo, I think this is messed up.
A girlfriend? Would I have made friends? Would our family be different? KouKou just tried anything. He at one point moved to Argentina. That didn't end well. He just came back feeling even more discouraged and upset. He bounced around from town to town, and this is so sad, but while he was gone, his dad was completely alone in the village, living next to the wings. I mean, he could see out the window and see the very spot that his wife had died. KouKou's older sister had moved away and gotten married. KouKou was out feeling lost in his life, and Mr. Zhang worked every single day in building a second floor to his house. He spent every penny, every waking moment building this by his hands.
这是2007年修的第一层，第二层是13年，自己白天黑了做，反正这一转的人都知道我白天黑了做。为什么从一看，为什么要把上面都装修这么好着呢？这准备娶媳妇了。
In China, in order to get married, especially in places like the village, men need to have a house. Otherwise, as a man, you'll be hard-pressed to find a wife. And the nicer the house, the more likely you'll find a bride. And Mr. Zhang just wanted his son to get married. So he poured his life into this house. He's like, you know what? My son has been through so much. He saw his mom die at 13. I'm going to make the most beautiful house so that he can marry the love of his life and create his own family. We're going to make better memories in this house. So he's doing this for years and years and years, and he doesn't even see KouKou for years. And finally, in 2017, December of 2017, he gets word from KouKou that KouKou is going to be visiting this year for Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year is huge. Typically, every kid that makes it out of the village and goes to live in the city, they make it back. They make that long journey all the way back home for Chinese New Year. There's even movies that we watched of these journeys of like these kids that were from the village and now they're like city career people, and it's like an absolute must. So it's 2017.
That's so wholesome. Yo, that's crazy. I'm not gonna lie, bro. If I was the dad, like, I'm out the village, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I'm out the village. Like, you have me hard pressed to have me stay somewhere where my wife got killed and nobody had my back. Like, and also I would not want to live next to that spot. I feel like there's no way you'd ever get over it if you were next to it. Even if you think you're over it, I think subconsciously being by something that holds such a negative memory will just carry over negativity. It's why, like, sometimes even if like let's say you had like a bad upbringing or something in your like childhood home, and then you left and you're an adult, and now let's say like your parents are better, but just being back in that childhood home like is not fun for whatever reason, or like it's just not pleasant feeling. It's like the same thing, but like on a more extreme level.
Almost 2018, and it's now been 22 years since his mother's death. KouKou remembers stepping foot back in the village and seeing some kids playing with fireworks. And he warned them, be careful, kids. You might get burned. They're like, wait, are you Uncle KouKou? Do you remember us? I was like a little kid when you saw me, but I'm like 9 now. And I'm 9, so my parents said it's okay to play with fireworks. So KouKou smiled. He walked home. His dad greeted him at the door.
And in countries outside of the US, everyone that you grew up around, Like in like y'all are like close family people, is like your uncle or your aunt. I swear to God. Like they're not related to you at all. But you know what? You spend enough time around them in your formative years, they're your uncle.
Good, KouKou. You're back.
Some remote farm probably couldn't afford moving. No, I agree he probably couldn't afford to move. But I'm just saying, like, if he could have afforded to like build a whole second story, I feel like he probably could have like, I don't know, put that energy in just like living somewhere else, you know? That's what I would have done at least. But I don't really know the circumstances.
Good. And that night, KouKou unpacked and he handed him an envelope. His dad is like, what is this? Take this money and use it for your retirement, Dad. I made a lot of money. And when sister comes home, we can all talk about helping you renovate your house. And his dad looks like he doesn't want to take the money and he just says, okay, it's okay. I don't blame you for not coming home for so many years. Just don't leave this year. Let's just all stay together as a family. KouKou wanted to cry. When he heard his dad say family, he wanted to cry because he knew that he would no longer have the luxury of being with his family. He would soon be in jail. When KouKou's older sister came home, she held KouKou's hands and she cried. I mean, they hadn't seen each other in years. And I think as an older sister, she just always felt bad for her little brother that had to watch his mom die. She was just so emotional. So February 15th of 2018, Chinese New Year's Day. If you're confused about the years, he came home December 2017. Chinese New Year is like February of 2018.
So
He was there for like 2 months.
stayed a few months.
Yeah, he had waited 22 years for this day. That morning, KouKou's dad left to go to their ancestors' graveyard. It was in the mountains. It's a tradition to go visit your family members and ancestors where they're buried on Chinese New Year. You have to go clean their gravesite, give them offerings. Typically, you bring food, fruit, and you burn ghost money, which is like fake money that your ancestors can spend in the afterlife. KouKou said that he would join him later, but he was busy doing his laundry. His dad did not think anything of it. He wasn't acting weird or strange, but KouKou knew that he would not be joining his dad. Once his dad left, he was waiting, looking through the window, waiting for the three Wang brothers to come home for Chinese New Year. This is the only time that they came home to the village, was for Chinese New Year. KouKou saw the eldest drive up.
Damn, he had like 2
car.
months to prepare for like D-Day, bro.
Then he saw the youngest son come home. The second son was nowhere to be found. KouKou hears the two brothers, the oldest and the youngest, talking about how they're going to go visit their family's graves. And he follows them from afar. He checks the little bag that he was wearing around his crossbody. The knife was still in there. That's good. He waits in the bushes near the bottom of the mountains. And when nobody else is around, he would attack. That's what he told himself. Around 12 p.m., the two brothers were...
Damn. I feel like he carried this like burden and this feeling of hate his whole life. So I get how it reached a head, but I feel like if anything, this just goes to show how like carrying that doesn't benefit you. I don't know. It's more complicated than that, but I feel like plotting out for revenge in most circumstances, this one I'm more like team revenge, but in most circumstances, I feel like doesn't benefit you. It more just wastes all the time you spent trying to seek the revenge. You just waste it on that energy on the other person. Like you're letting this person who already harmed you continue to control you and harm your life in the day-to-day by trying to plot revenge, which in my opinion is just furthering the hurt when instead you could be focusing on like moving on. But in this case, like it's more complicated.
Were done and they start heading down the mountain. KouKou pounced on them. He covered his face with a mask and a cap, and before the youngest could even register what's going on, KouKou slit his throat. KouKou starts stabbing him in the chest and the stomach, and he falls to the ground, and the eldest brother is frozen in fear. He looks at KouKou, registers who this guy is, and he whispers, "Zhang KouKou." And he starts booking it. He starts running. KouKou's chasing him, tackles him to the ground, and he stabs him multiple times on the chest and the abdomen. Both Wang brothers were now dead and left on the mountain. KouKou runs covered in blood all the way to the Wang house, knocks down the front door, and walks right up to Mr. Wang, who is busy preparing this intense Chinese New Year dinner, and he walks straight up to him and stabs him in the stomach. Mr. Wang drops to the ground, and KouKou slit his throat multiple times. Mrs.
Multiple
Wang was in the
times?
house.
Damn, one wasn't enough?
She's an elderly woman at this point with deteriorating eyesight and hearing. She didn't even know that her husband was dead. She just heard this commotion and screaming, and she just kept screaming like, "What's going on? What's going on?" KouKou walks straight up to her, and she's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? What happened to my husband? What did you do?" And he told her, "You're a woman. I won't kill you today. And on his way out, he stood in the Wang driveway, the same spot that his mom was murdered 22 years ago. And he lit the oldest Wang brother's beloved car on fire. He had...
Oh, that's hard though. Hey, listen. If anything, you know, I don't really support murdering people, but I support destruction of property in exchange for you murdering. You know what I'm saying? Like, he killed your mom, burn his car. Oh my God, burn his car. That's fine. I can get behind that. I have no conflicting feelings about that. Okay. The car is fine. You know, if you would have just done the car, that probably would have been a little bit better, but you know, that probably would have led to like more problems for you. But you know, hey.
Just taken the lives of 3 of the Wang family members. And now
getting behind murder is hard for me. You know, I can't really do that. But the burning the car, yo, listen, bro, I'm team you on that fully. Fully team you, you know? Fully team you. You murdering people, that's kind of a hard sell. I don't really support that, but I understand your intentions.
Stood there watching it burn. According to villagers that saw him that day, they said KouKou kept muttering, "I finally did it. Finally got my revenge. It's a pity I couldn't get the second son." The villagers discovered the Wang brothers' bodies fairly quickly, and you know, there's a lot of foot traffic up and down the mountain because that's where a lot of the graveyards are. And through witness statements, the police knew that they were looking for Zhang KouKou. I think most people assumed that he was on the run, that he was long gone from the village at this point. Even KouKou's dad thought that. He ran all the way back to the village, back home, because he heard KouKou was in trouble. He thought KouKou had been in some sort of fight. He had no idea that KouKou had just committed triple homicide. For 2 days, nobody could find KouKou. Then he would just walk into the police station and turn himself in.
That's crazy. Damn, he has morals though.
KouKou never had any intention of fleeing, escaping, or getting away with this. He said he waited 2 days to turn himself in because it was Chinese New Year and there's a lot of fireworks. And he just wanted to see fireworks one last time. Later, he was asked what he did the last few days, and he said,
"Nah, I see what you're doing with the little music piano in the background, okay? You're not gonna get me."
Turned myself in immediately, but I wanted to watch the fireworks and just take a few walks. I walked to the lake, I threw my knife in there, and I slept on the grass the entire night. I tried to sleep. It felt really peaceful, but I didn't really fall asleep. The next morning, I walked along the river until about maybe 1 p.m. I walked so long that my feet hurt. I wanted to go back and visit my dad one more time, but when I walked home, I heard a lot of people talking, so I ran off. After that, I went to go visit my mom. It was cold that night, so I slept by an ATM machine, and then I turned myself in. The police asked, "What happened when you went to visit your mom?" He said, "I kneeled at her grave and I told her, 'Mom, I did it. I got my revenge for you.'" And he said in that moment, on his mom's grave, on his knees, he felt like all that pain and anger and hatred and resentment that had been slowly poisoning him and killing him from the inside, it was just gone. And he turned himself in.
That's crazy. Like, I understand the motive. I really do. But it's like, damn, it's really hard to just fully get behind.
He said, you know, in the past 22 years, maybe if Mr. Wang or any member of the Wang family had come to apologize, or maybe I could have lived a life worth living, maybe I could have gotten married and had kids, then maybe this tragedy wouldn't have happened. So he's being very open and honest with the police, but the police would later be a bit shady. We'll get to it. KouKou's older sister almost fainted when she learned of what he did. After his arrest, the surviving Wang brother, the second son, came out to say that this killing is not a revenge killing. He said he didn't kill my family because he wanted to avenge his mother's death. Besides, my little brother was the one that hit his mom on the head. So again, he's just like bringing it back to his little...
That's what you... But your little brother died anyway, so like you can't say it was for revenge then, because he did kill him. I mean, I think he was trying to kill everyone except the mom, to be honest.
Brother being the culprit, he's like, oh, now that everyone knows about what happened 22 years ago, just so you know, it wasn't me that hit his mom. Even if he...
See? Like, that's so weird.
Mr. Zhang was interviewed, and he said, it was the second kid. It was the second Wang brother. The second son was holding a bat, and from the back, he hit her head. The interviewer asked, where did it happen?
The fact that the one that did the thing is the one that lived is like so infuriating to me.
Mr. Zhang pointed on the ground in the area where his wife was killed. And you saw the second son was the one that hit your wife? Yes, the second son. The second son hit her. What happened after he hit her? He hit her and left. January 8th of 2019, KouKou's trial began. It was a really quick trial in the sense that the evidence was there, the killer admitted to it, the judge sentenced him to death almost instantly. Which, side note about this trial, the prosecutor tried to reject KouKou's admission that he did this for revenge. The prosecutors argued that KouKou did this because he was unsatisfied with his life and society. They basically almost called him an incel at one point. They
What? Nah, that's crazy.
straight up asked him, you're 35. You refuse to get a wife? Why? Does nobody want to date you? And he said, after my mother died, I often have flashbacks in my head, and I can't get rid of them. At the end of the day, I'm just being realistic. With my current mental state, there's no way I could make another person happy. Besides, I was fine on my own. They tried to argue that he's not a...
See, that's crazy. He's even competent enough to be like, damn, I shouldn't hurt somebody else. Like, yo, I'll give it to KouKou, bro. And besides killing people, his morals everywhere else are pretty sound. I know killing people is probably one of the more... That's like one of the worst things you can... No, that is probably one of the worst things you can do. Okay? For sure. Not denying that. But everywhere else, his morals were sound. Which I think is a testament to the fact that, like, I don't think he was a bad person. I just think he was done very wrong and very troubled. And I'm not defending him killing people, but I'm saying, like, it's more understandable to me than the way that the Wang family has operated in literally every other sense.
Robin Hood, that he's not fighting injustice and getting revenge. He's just mad that the Wang brothers are doing better than him, that they have fancy cars and fancy careers, and that they're happier than him. To back their theory up, they brought up the fact that KouKou and his family accused the second son of being the killer. They claimed the little brother went to jail to cover for him and get less time since he's a minor. But the mom and the second son were not killed. So why wouldn't KouKou kill the one that he believed to be the one that killed his mom? So maybe it wasn't a revenge killing?
Because where was the second son the night where they were killed? Maybe they should ask that question. Like, why are you so biased? Like, to be honest, if you're an investigator, regardless of if you think what the criminal did is wrong or not, you should still get the accurate story, okay? And also, why do the prosecutors want to make it seem like it's him being jealous? He already admitted to it. Why are you already trying to spin a narrative to make it worse than it is? You want to know why? Because I feel like they're trying to cover for the existing Wang families that are still alive. There's got to be some shady dealings going on. Because she said in the beginning, one of them was a government official later in life. So in my opinion, I think maybe the second son is a government official. He has some ties to the police or the prosecutors, and he's trying to make them paint this guy that killed his family members, KouKou, as crazy, so that his like statement about him being the one that killed KouKou's mom, right? The second son, like them saying he killed her, is seen as less credible, so he can live his life normally and doesn't face any repercussions for this. Because or for what happened 22 years ago.
KouKou was really upset about this. He told the judge angrily, and there's video of this, that he was being vulnerable with the police. He never tried to hide anything. He told them everything. He told them the real reason it was revenge, but they wouldn't listen. They took what he said about his life, turned it around, and twisted it to spin their own little story. He said they used this to use it against me. They said I was mentally crazy for avenging my mother's death. They said it was because I was unhappy with society. That's why I did it. They said I was unsatisfied with my life, and that's what led me to kill these people. There are so many people out there that are unhappy with the world and with their lives. But do these people go out and kill people? Everyone has a reason to kill. It's not that I'm mentally insane. It was for revenge.
Like, he's being, like, the thing is, he's literally telling you, I did it because of this. And they're like, nah, don't listen to him. Like, yo, the only thing in a court case they should be proven is if he killed the person or not, a lot of the time. And if he already admitted he killed the person, why do you think he'd lie about everything else? You know what I'm saying? He already admitted I did it for revenge. Like, that's not like an admission that makes you look good either. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't really make you look good to be like, I killed for revenge. Like, what? No, that's not like a thing where you're like, yeah, I get it. Like, no, a lot of times you're like, what the hell? Like, maybe if he was like, it was self-defense and that was his lie, sure. Okay, then yeah, call him out. But why would he lie about admitting that it's for revenge? That doesn't make you look good. That's not a good enough thing to lie about, in my opinion. I really think they just wanted the second son to look more competent than KouKou, so that KouKou was painted as crazy, so the second son didn't have any repercussions for what happened 22 years ago when he killed his mom. Like, he ain't even pleading out of the death sentence.
说我给我妈报仇是幌子，我是对这个社会不满，对生活不满，我把人家杀了。对这个社会、对生活不满的人多了，那每个人都去把人杀了吗？
Some people argue that maybe the best revenge is to make the killer feel what you felt. Losing your loved one, having them viciously murdered, and having to live with the guilt that it was partly your fault. That, to most people, would probably be worse than death. Later, reporters asked KouKou if the Wang family ever came to apologize, and he said, "In the 22 years, Wang never communicated with us or found anyone to talk with us. They never said a single word of apology, nor was there any compensation. Maybe at first they didn't have the money to do it, but they live a good life now. They bought a house in the city. The eldest is the president of Nanhu District's management committee. The second son has a secure job. The third has a stable income in Shan. And I feel like they're avoiding us on purpose. It's because of this that made me grow to resent them even more. On top of that, in the 22 years, the third son almost never came back. And even if he did, he only came back during New Year's. Never to apologize, ever. He's the one that said he did it. Do you regret what you did? There's no regretting it now." KouKou's family were outraged during the entire trial because it felt like...
Damn, there's no regretting it now. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I really feel like he's honest. He did it out of revenge. And I think the fact that they're trying to respin that, like, I get that's a prosecutor's job to spin a story a lot of the time. But prosecutors shouldn't be spinning a story as much as defense lawyers. Defense lawyers are trying to make the crime and the evidence look as, like, negligible as possible, okay? The prosecutors are trying to make it look as important as possible, but also be accurate.
Like deja vu from when their mother was murdered. The Wang family had people on their side. KouKou's older sister said this about the trial. You know, even in the beginning, when our mother was killed, many people were coming out and giving fake evidence, like fake witness statements. Do you want to know why? Because the Wang's son is a government official. In the village, whoever's son works for the government, those are the people that get a say. This is the reality we live in. If my father's son was the government official, then everyone would be talking for us, in support of us. And that story that my mom spat on the second child of the Wang family, that's not even true. I remember it. We were walking home from doing our laundry in the river, and the second son started yelling at my mom, unprovoked. He was screaming nasty words at my mom, and of course, what do you expect my mom to do? She started yelling back. KouKou's sister believes that if the second son did not instigate this fight, they would have walked past the Wang house. She said, "We began yelling back and forth, and the second son got really agitated. He grabbed my mother by the head and neck and started shaking her. And that's how the fight broke out." She also said, you know, the Wangs say...
Not gonna lie. Yo, listen. Regardless if she spit or not, she did not deserve to die. But also, I believe the sister story more because of how shady the Wangs have moved and every other aspect of this story. Like, there's not been one time where they've done something where I'm like, damn, they have some morals, you know? So him starting the fight low-key seems like it would make more sense to me anyways. Not saying that is the case, but I feel like based on like pattern recognition, like that makes more sense to me.
They found a wooden bat and they picked it up to protect themselves. But that's not true. Who just has baseball bats laying around in the driveway? They went inside and they grabbed it. Meaning the Wangs were a lot more malicious than they claimed. They literally brought out the murder weapon.
我也不希望他报仇，我知道报仇没有什么好下场。如果他这辈子要不报仇，说不定有一天娶个媳妇，有妻有子，热热闹闹还是一家人。
The judge said he didn't really care. KouKou was getting the death penalty because of the fact...
I don't think the situation is funny, but I think the way she presented it, the judge said he didn't really care. Like, she really went from like building it up and then really slowly and then just quickly revealing like, yeah, so what he said was impotent and profound. It was that he didn't give a fuck. Like, that's comedic. That's a comedic delivery. I'm sorry. That's a comedic delivery, okay? Regardless, I like it. The way it was delivered was not for dramatic effect. That was for comedy. Like, that's how you say stuff to be funny. Like,
fact that the triple homicides
do
were
that on purpose.
premeditated and incredibly brutal. KouKou's attorney immediately filed for a retrial, stating that KouKou had immense mental health issues from his mother's murder 13 years ago. And this is a really sad part. KouKou's dad was trying to borrow $15,000 to try and get KouKou examined by these experts in mental health. For some reason, he wasn't really given a mental health screening. Like, the family would have to pay out of pocket for it, and to the tune of like $15,000. That encompassed like the legal help, the medical exams. I mean, the system really does keep failing KouKou in this one. So Mr. Zhang visits his son in jail.
Why would they, like, I feel like at least in the US, they do like medical exams and stuff, like, regardless a lot of the time. Because there's like, it's written in like rights that you like are able to do that or certain things.
And he's trying to encourage him. He promises his son, I'm going to get you out of here. I heard that with $15,000, we can get you tested and we're going to fight for you to live. You can get a life sentence, or maybe one day you could even get out. KouKou was mad. He looked at his dad and said, you're being dumb. So think about it from KouKou's perspective. He's not just being this kid that's like, you're dumb, dad. He had given his dad his entire life savings because he knew his fate. He accepted it. He knew this was the consequence for what he wanted to
Isn't this in the US? This is in China.
do. The last thing he wanted was his dad to spend money or borrow money or put himself in danger for money for him. He told him, don't be stupid. You're stupid. Don't do this. And he said, if you're going to keep talking like this, I never want to see you again.
他说你为什么接手啊？你真笨！我说你服了，我说你在这那个管到的知道吧？听说15万给你开鉴定，开发给你判个有期徒刑或者是无期徒刑，可以待着知道？我一说，我不跟你说了，你别说了，我真笨，知道吧？
And I know $15,000 sounds like a lot. And it is, but just to show you how impossible it was for this family, KouKou's dad was interviewed, and he said that all of his life's work and basically his net worth was lined up on this wall right now. And you just see these bags of grain. He said, I can sell every single bag of grain on this wall. I'll maybe make $300. This is my life's work. This is my food. This is all I have. He said, maybe I could go and get some oil from these grains, press them, get some rapeseed oil. That would get me an extra maybe $200. $500 is a drop in the bucket when you're talking about 15 grand. He asked the interviewer, I'm 70. Even if I work the rest of my life, do you think I can make $15,000? How can I make $15,000?
Also, why is it so expensive just to get a damn psych eval? Like, they have standardized questions they ask and they score it and that's it. Like, bro, nowadays you can Google a psych eval and like 9 times out of 10, it's probably the one they gave you too. Like, I've done quizzes online that like really were like super accurate to how normal psych evals feel in like hospitals today. Like, say the exact same questions. The fact that it's that expensive is so dumb. China doesn't think any of that doesn't apply here. Yeah, but the actual resources of evaluating someone's psyche is just a human being like doing it. And it's not like it's gonna take like years and years. It probably takes like 20 minutes of questioning, and then they come to a conclusion. They're upcharging it like a ridiculous amount, especially given the circumstances.
The second trial took place April 11th of 2019. His lawyer tried to argue that he was mentally unstable from his mother's death and that the revenge was actually human instinct. So this is actually a very interesting defense, but he argued about the literary classics. It's very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard this. The defense attorney starts talking about books like The Count of Monte Cristo, like Hamlet, and it's this... The Count of Monte Cristo is the story of a man who was in prison for a crime he didn't commit. There were these jealous colleagues and corrupt prosecutors that made sure that he was supposed to rot in prison. And while he was locked up, he starts plotting his revenge. And it's just this really complicated journey. It's a complicated human journey of seeking revenge. It's the process of, you see this man lose his kindness and lose his positive outlook and his trust in humanity, and he's just so hurt, and you almost see him transform into a villain of sorts. And then he slowly starts realizing, at first he's like, no, I'm doing the right thing. This is human nature. Justice and revenge, they're the same thing. He almost felt like he was doing God's work because every bad crime needs to have a consequence. And then slowly you see him realize that he's the villain, and that throughout his whole seeking of revenge, he hurts a lot of innocent people. And so the lawyer brings this up and he says, think about these books, these literary classics that everyone around the world has read, The Count of Monte Cristo.
Like, I agree. Like, you can definitely hurt people in your pursuit of revenge that don't deserve to be hurt. My thing is, if you only hurt the party that hurt you, I'm kind of like, hey, all right. But a lot of the time, I also don't advocate for revenge because, once again, I think it's a waste of time on your own. It impedes on your own ability to move on. You're never going to move on, and you're never going to be happy as long as you're playing for revenge. And on top of that, a lot of the time, you will like lose your sense of humanity, like this in this example. And sometimes there are some people that are delulu, okay, and they think like everything deserves revenge when it's like not that big of a deal, or it's one of those things where it's like, oh, like you spit on me one time, so like I'm gonna kill your puppy. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll like do something that's like not even equivalent. That's also why I don't advocate for revenge, because people a lot of the times like they don't have a sense of like self, okay, or they don't have a sense of like objective truth of their situation, because it's a very subjective thing when you're in it. And so a lot of the times, if you feel wronged, you want to hurt the person as much as you feel hurt, but you can't quantify hurt if through any means other than a similar equivalent action. But if you don't know what that is, you're just going to do what you can do to hurt them the most. That's the easiest. That's what people do. They'll do whatever they can do. That is the easiest thing to hurt someone, the quickest, the least amount of effort. And a lot of the times that means they'll do something that's a lot worse. And that's also why I think revenge is really bad and a harmful thing to like ever encourage, because a lot of the times, even if you think revenge can be just in some circumstances, a lot of times people take it too far because they don't really know how bad they were done, because they were the one done bad. And it's very hard to objectively be like, hey, this is equivalent to this.
Hamlet, Shakespeare, they're all
even
centered
objectively
around
equating
revenge.
one crime to one that's not
And
even the
because
same thing.
human
It's very
instinct
hard
is
to like
want
argue too in
revenge.
certain
And I'm
regards.
not saying that my client was right, but that's what makes humans human. And I think that we need to
That's why I think revenge is like
take this
really
into
unproductive.
consideration when we
Like,
sentence
listen,
them.
I've had some situations, and this is like me giving advice to anyone watching, where I could and should have probably taken revenge, but I didn't. Okay, because I think it's just, why would I put myself through the ringer even more to maybe hurt this other person? Because a lot of the times when you seek revenge, you are the only person you end up hurting is yourself. It doesn't go through, or it doesn't go as planned. If it's in like a PR or court of public opinion thing, whoever has the most support or the most of like an audience, let's say two YouTubers are beefing, regardless of who's right or wrong, if one YouTuber has like 1 million subscribers and one has like 200, the person with 200, regardless of what they say, a lot of times does not stand a chance, okay? Unless there is serious evidence and in undeniable proof. And even then, you're still going to get shit talked and harassed and da-da-da-da. And I feel like in terms of like coming out with a story and evidence, that's different from revenge, right? That's a truth. Revenge is an equivalent action in your mind. It's not coming out with truth. It's not seeking justice. It's an equivalent action that gives the other person an equivalent amount of harm in your mind. If you're doing that in a court of public opinion, which means it's already petty to begin with, okay? Because it's not justice. You're just trying to hurt the other person the same way they hurt you, or screw them over the same way they hurt you. A lot of the times, if they have more of a ground to stand on because they manipulated enough to get to that ground, you're just going to hurt yourself more. There's no point. It's better to just move on. You know what I'm saying? It's better to just move on. And I also feel like a lot of the times there have been times where people get revenge and they don't feel better. You're still upset. Even if you were to kill someone who killed your mom and get away with it, guess what? Your mom is still going to be dead. KouKou's mom is still dead, whether he killed those two or not. Whether you think they deserve to live and breathe is a different question. But the pure root cause of KouKou's misery is never going to be resolved. His mom is not going to be around. That's also why I think revenge isn't always the most productive thing either, because a lot of the times you're still never going to have the solution to the problem, right? And like I said, I do think some people deserve, to have the ball they threw thrown back at them. But I think a lot of the times the only thing you're ever going to do is hurt yourself more and be feeling left with the only feeling you're going to have is the fact that you wasted your time, and you're still going to be left with the feeling of hurt.
I think this is a very fascinating defense. I don't think it's one that I've really ever seen. So it's just interesting. What do you think of it? Do you think the lawyer is just doing what he can with what he's working with, or do you feel like it makes sense? So the lawyer told the judge that these things should be taken into consideration and please give him a chance. At the end of the retrial, KouKou was still sentenced to death. The second trial was live streamed. It had 2.5 million viewers.
认定你犯什么罪，给你判处什么刑罚。
犯故意杀人这个毁坏财产罪，判处死刑。
合并执行
2 million is crazy, bitch.
死刑。
是。
And when he was sentenced to death again, the entire country went nuts. They were upset at the government for such a harsh punishment. They argued there were people out there that killed for fun for no reason at all, and they got less time. Netizens went wild for this case. They commented on court live streams, on posts, on blog posts, on threads. They said, apologize? Why is the judge asking him to apologize? He was forced to do this. This man is a hero. Another person wrote,
Okay, hero is crazy. I'm not gonna lie.
His own mom get killed? I don't think revenge is ever too late. I support him. Watching your mom get killed at a young age, that trauma is something you don't just wipe away. Someone said, in my eyes, he's innocent. Another person called him a hero, and someone said, even though the consequences are huge, in a world that's unfair, you can only use unfair means to get justice. Someone said he was...
That's a hard quote that's a hard quote to like deny. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think that's not a good mentality, but I honestly don't believe it's not true a lot of the times, which is rough. Because if everyone acts that way, then we're just gonna lead to a world where everyone is more miserable and does more messed up stuff.
He was in the army. Nobody had any bad things to say about him. For our country, he raised his guns. And for his mother, he raised his knife. His youth was given to the country, and his life was given to his mom. From what I could find, majority of people were in support of KouKou. I mean, of course, in varying degrees. You know, most people were like, okay, this is very sad. I don't think he should be executed. No one is saying let him free. Most people were saying he should serve time, but these things should be taken into consideration. Like, do we really need to execute him? But there was a small group of people that believed technically the punishment fit the crime. He took a life and now he must give his. Now what's interesting is that started a whole new conversation of, you say that regular humans cannot get justice and take a life for a life. But why is the government allowed to do it? So all these people that were in support of the government's execution, the death sentence, they were saying, KouKou took a life, he must now give his life. And the netizens that support KouKou are saying, that's what he thought too. They took his mom's life, so he took a life. So why do you agree with the last half but not the first half? How can you say the government is doing the right thing?
That is like a logic crux.
It's hard because if you really try, you can see so many sides to this, and it's just so messy. Despite the anger from the public, the court stood their judgment and they executed him. And in China, they moved very quick. He was sentenced to death, and July 17th, 2019, he was executed. So a little after a year after committing his crime. He had 2 trials and then executed.
I hear they wait a while, I think. It's like some people have been on death row for like 10 plus years.
It's okay. So, yeah, he was comforting his dad to the end. After his execution, the Wang family's surviving son, the second son, said,
I feel like the dad
even though
must be
KouKou is dead, I don't feel happy at all. There's no winner here. His death isn't going to bring back my 3 family members. Meanwhile, KouKou's dad... So KouKou was cremated after his execution, and his dad refused to take back his ashes. He said, I don't want his ashes. Leave it at the government's place. This case is unjustly accused, unfair, and I'm not convinced that this is the right thing to do, so I'm not going to get his ashes. A lot of people speculate that his dad was also not ready to face the truth, that his son was gone now. The government kept calling him to ask him to take back the son's ashes, and he kept refusing, so they eventually threatened him. They said, I'm going to throw his ashes away. KouKou's dad said, throw it away then. Do what you want to do. Throw my son into the river and let him travel around the world. In the end, KouKou's friends went and got his ashes and gave them to his father. They went to the mountains and buried him. No ritual, no ceremony, no funeral. KouKou's dad said, there was no funeral, so this way it's as if my son never died. KouKou's dad visits him often, and he says, I feel really sad when I come up here. My wife and son are here. Even just talking about it, I feel very sad. And to make matters worse, his house is like a prison. When he looks out the window, he sees the very spot that his wife was killed. When he looks up, he sees the second floor of his house that he spent the later part of his life building. Every waking hour, he was
Damn,
building
his
this
father
house so
really
that
went
KouKou
through
could
it,
find a
bro.
woman one day and marry her. He worked so hard to make the interior beautiful so that he could get married one day. He paid attention to every little detail because this is where his grandkids would one day grow up. This is where KouKou and his wife would start a family and maybe start new memories, happy memories. And now it just sits empty. He says he doesn't even go upstairs because he doesn't want to get upstairs dirty with his dirty clothes. KouKou's sister was equally heartbroken. She said, all three of the Wangs, Mr. Wang, the second son, the youngest son, they should all have been punished. 22 years ago, they should have all been punished. Why did just the youngest brother get punished? It wasn't like he was the only one that was fighting that night. And my mom died that night. And we got what, $1,500? That's it. We never got anything else, not even an apology. I know there's nothing good about getting revenge.
I feel so
and I know
bad for
that
the dad,
maybe
bro.
if my brother hadn't chosen this route, he might be alive with a wife and kids, and he might have had this big happy family. But he doesn't. And maybe he would have if the government had responded accordingly when his mom was murdered. The family said that they do feel thankful, though, as the court live streams and KouKou's story spread like wildfire in China. KouKou was kept in the news for a while, and people who were passing by the village, or they would go out of their way to stop by the village, complete strangers would visit KouKou at his grave. Complete strangers would visit KouKou's dad and bring him food and help him because he's an elderly man.
That's
KouKou's
sweet.
dad said that's the only thing that keeps him going. He's just so grateful. But ultimately, he does regret that his son did this, and he does believe his son was wrong for getting revenge. In total, 5 lives were lost from this case. The 3 Wang family members, Mrs. Zhang, and now
His
KouKou's
dad
son.
literally,
What are your
like,
thoughts?
had everything taken from him, bro. Like, everything. His life's work, his son, which a lot of dads see as, like, the person they're passing their torch to. Because, you know, especially in traditional families like this, or more traditional societies, like, the daughter is more seen as, like, joining another family, you know? But your son is, like, holding it down for yours. So that's why it probably hits a little bit harder in a way, because I feel like parents in these cultures accept that their daughter will be, like, going to another person's family a lot of the times. Whereas, like, the son is, like, still theirs, you know? Especially bearing the name and everything. That's so sad, bro.